All right, let's start by looking at the E6 slide film. So this is one of the first exposures I shot on the trip. And this tree caught my eye just because you can see that the bigger part of the tree there was broken off, and then you got this other branch here that was still doing just fine. There's this nice area back here with some desert varnish. But balancing it was difficult just from the standpoint that I was trying to figure out where my composition should be. And this works okay. I don't know that I'm entirely in love with it, but it's a good exposure. This is after it finished raining and hailing. And seems to be pretty decent. I'll have 2 exposures of this scene. This is one of the ones where I'll probably have to think about a little bit and see how it grows on me, but it seems to be pretty decent. That was my 600mm lens. Next up, ooh, this is the one that I was looking forward to. And I think I like what I see here. So, really cool juniper. This one really caught my eye when I was hiking through the wash. There was a bush, I opted to include just a little bit right here, thinking I could always get rid of that if I need to afterwards. But I just really liked the way that this tree was so nicely formed, had a lot of symmetry to it, so I decided just to center the scene. Now I'm going to have 2 exposures of this, one with really good reflected light and one with just kind of average reflected light. Based on how dark this is right here, I'm guessing that this is kind of the average reflected light. But I tried to compose a tree so that these parts right here were up against the lighter colored areas of sandstone. A little cactus right there. That's good. This was taken with my 300mm normal lens. I don't have a lot of room for movement, so I didn't really try to straighten out the perspective too much on this one. But also it's kind of a daunting wall in the background. So I like that one. It's good. Let's see what's up next. Aha, here is the reflected light version. So this was my 4th and final sheet of film when I was hiking into the canyon. And see how there's a little more light right here? So this, I'll show you, is the difference that reflected light makes. So if I put these like right here, you'll see that there's a warmer light here that's a little bit cooler. Now this is catching some light here versus this isn't. And overall a little more warmth to the scene. So it was definitely worth exposing that second sheet of film. This is not, I mean, that's a good photo, but that is even better. All because of that reflected light. So I'm very happy with that photo. I just love shooting trees. I don't see any evidence of wind or anything. I really like that photo. Just has a really nice feel to it. Yay. So this is another tree I photographed. This is in Capitol Reef now. This was not in reflected light. This was my safety shot. And this was a tough composition. I was having a hard time balancing it. And I'm a hair bright on my exposure, but I'm fine. But just looking at this, I'm not really digging it, but I'm wondering when I see the reflected light version if I'm going to like it more. 600mm lens, but I was trying to balance the tree. Basically, I would have preferred to not have the white area, but my lens wasn't long enough. And I didn't really want to go up there because it was a really fragile area. So I didn't want to mess it up, lots of cryptobiotic soil up in there. So maybe the other version of this one with the reflected light might be better. That's a little dominant right there. These guys right here take a little bit of attention away from the tree. But all things considered, not a bad composition, but I really do want to see the other one with the reflected light. And then here's my other tree. Now here, we have some reflected light now. So if I lay these guys side to side, it doesn't look super dramatic there. I think the bigger difference is over here. And even that isn't look dramatically different, but that is warmer. So having that reflected light does help. It's almost a little bit disorienting, I think, with all the lines coming like that. I'm a hair bright, but I am okay for my exposure. Again, I'm still not quite sure what to think. I might like it, I might not. I don't know, but when you see a big wall with desert varnish with a little reflected light, it's really hard to pass up. None of the leaves are moving, which is good. I'll have to probably scan that one to see what I think. So this was another scene I photographed, and again, I'm a little hot on the exposure here. I thought I'd like this one more than I do. But I have different variations of this with different amounts of light on it, including a color negative version. But I really like kind of the curvature of this area of desert varnish and the way it almost seems to alternate in areas and look kind of like matrixy, if that makes any sense. But this is not really ideal light, and I'm also a little hot on my exposure. But I have 3 sheets of slide film on this one, and then 2 of color neg. Okay, so here's a reflected light version of that first photo. Not that first photo, but the first photo from Capitol Reef. And here's the non-reflected light. So this was mostly skylight, not a lot of reflected light yet. And it warmed up here, which is nice. Not quite sure on this one yet. It's chaotic. I might be okay with it. I think I'll have to sit on it for a little while. This was a particularly simple photo to shoot just because, I mean, I'm close to the parking lot. Everyone sees that tree that goes to that parking lot. I might like it. One thing that was interesting is you have these diverging lines, like the slope drops down here versus that rises. I might be okay with that. Interesting. I really do enjoy using the 600mm lens though. Not bad. So here's another variation of that other scene. Again, it doesn't really have quite the depth I'm looking for. My exposure is better on this one, but I also don't have a lot of reflected light there. I wonder if this was the first photo I shot, kind of my safety shot. I wanted there to be more emphasis on this tree and that wall, but instead I have more emphasis here and here because that's bright and that's catching some light there too. Let's see what else. I have one more of that and I got some color neg of that. And here's the last of that scene. I think I just don't have enough emphasis where I want it. Your eye goes to bright areas. So instead of going to here, it goes to here, and to here. So it goes towards the edges as opposed to the middle. Maybe that's the one where the color neg could be a little bit better because it'll do a little bit better with some of that. But not quite what I was hoping for on that one. That's actually one of the ones I was really curious about. It's interesting. So this is one of the exact same scenes I photographed from last year, but this time I had a different vantage point. I got closer to it and I used a 600mm lens because I wanted to isolate that tree but still be able to see all that. And I got a good exposure here. I was a bit more experimental with my composition, just throwing this guy in the lower corner. That's one where I'll probably have to scan it to get a little better feel for it, whether I like it or not. This was a very rushed photo because when I was setting it up, the sun was peeking over the top of these cliffs over here, and within about probably about 2-3 minutes of me shooting the photo. The location I was at was in full sun, and I didn't want that to be the case when I was actually shooting it because it'd flare up the lens a little bit. I might like it. I don't know. Interesting. Glad it turned out though. And this was a tree that was not as dominant as some of the other ones. But, you know, you see a tree, you see a background wall, you see reflected light. You always want to try to find a composition for it. And I had just one photo and I didn't know if it was under reflected light or not, and this is, which is good. I don't think it has quite the same appeal as some of the other trees, but it's a pretty twisted, gnarly looking tree there. If anything, I'm a hair dark on the exposure. I still got detail everywhere where I need it, but I'm just a little bit dark in some of those areas there. But that one turned out pretty decent, but again, not quite as appealing as some of the other ones. But it was a one sheet exposure. I usually like to shoot doubles, but sometimes I can only shoot singles. So next up is the color negative. I will have 2 sheets. It's from a scene you guys have already looked at. So it's this one here with the juniper, the desert varnish, and the wash. I honestly can't tell much based on looking at that, but I have two versions of it. All I can tell is that the exposure is fine. But that just may not have been all that hot of a scene to begin with. Even though it looked really cool, but I just didn't capture it quite as well as I wanted. But I'll have to get these scanned to get a feel for it. But I want to thank everyone for watching, and we'll see you around next time.